Okay, we're right at noon here. If you haven't done so already, please introduce yourself in the chat. Um, Mute your microphone and turn off your camera. And I'm going to turn it over here to Nick Callahan to give us a couple introductory words, and then we will get started with our Orbo Winter webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Like Jen just said, my name is Nick, and I'm the Environmental Education and Outreach Coordinator at Orsenco. Just a couple of things to go over real quick before we jump in. Today is going to be discussing funding the future and how federal and state funding can be used for watershed recovery. Like Jen was just saying, if you can keep your camera and your microphone off, that'll help with internet latency and making sure this whole thing runs smoothly. Since we had around 130 people register for this, so hopefully we'll have a whole lot of people in here while we're hearing about what's going on around the Ohio River Basin. Um, so. Just a few other quick notes. If you do have any questions throughout, feel free to put those in the chat, and we will be keeping an eye on those. And Jen will make sure that those questions get to the speakers throughout. And we are going to be recording this discussion today and uploading it to the Orba YouTube channel. That will be mailed out to everyone in the next couple of days. Takes a couple of days for me to get through that. And if you have any ideas for future discussion topics, or if you want to be more involved in the planning or would like to present on something yourself, please reach out to Jen. Her email is listed there, and I believe she put it in the chat earlier as well, so you can look through that to find it. But for today, we're going to just have a quick intro, opening remarks, and then we'll have Amy, Stephanie, and Chloe all presenting, and then we'll have either if we're tight on time, we'll have all of the questions at the end, or if we're flowing through pretty well, we'll have questions throughout. So we'll see how that flows. But just a quick note, Orsenco is the fiscal sponsor of Orba. Jen will introduce Orba here in a moment. But as the fiscal sponsor, Orsenco was created back in 1948 as the agency to monitor the Ohio River. Back in the 1920s and 30s, the Ohio River was in very bad conditions. Orsenco was created to with the purpose of monitoring and helping with the improvement of the Ohio River. This is our region. We have 8 states that make up our compact, ranging from Illinois all the way up to New York. So we have a staff of 22 super dedicated people covering this entire region and doing water quality monitoring throughout the year. As far as funding and how we operate, we have state and federal commissioners that all kind of act as our board of directors, leading us through our goals. But then our funding is through US EPA and through state funds. And we, of course, can't do what we do without our incredible network of so many entities, many of which are on this call today. So with that said, here is our flyer for today, and I'll pass it over to Jen.
Thank you, Nick. Um, well, I just lost my note page. Just a second. There we are. Okay, thank you, Nick. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Ohio River Basin Alliance discussion series, ORBA, better known as ORBA. ORBA is a collective of stakeholders with a unified voice for the Ohio River Basin, consisting of 14 states with over 500 members working to sustain healthy ecosystems and vibrant communities within the basin. I'd like to thank our chair of ORBA, Chris Lorenz, with the Thomas More University, and our past chair, Craig Butler, with the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. They're working diligently on the legislation for the Ohio River Basin Restoration Initiative currently with Jordan Lebecken with the National Wildlife Federation and many other stakeholders. So thank you for your work on that. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this webinar, Orsenco, of course, Ohio University Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Service, the Kentucky Association of Environmental Education, and the Ohio Watershed Leaders. So my name is Jen Bowman. I'm the Director of Environmental Programs at the Ohio University's Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Service, and I also lead ORBA's working group called the Knowledge and Education for Informed Decisions. If anyone wants to get involved, please reach out to me. We always have and welcome folks to that group. So I want to get this started here. We have three speakers: Amy Mackey with Ohio University, Stephanie Dyer with Eastgate's Regional Council of Governments, and Chloe Brantley with Kentucky's Rural Water Association. So Amy's going to kick us off with her presentation about Raccoon Creek. So restoration and recovery of scenic river designation of the Raccoon Creek watershed, which is a major large tributary to the Ohio River Basin. Amy coordinates restoration work in the Raccoon Creek watershed and assists with other environmental projects as needed at the Ohio University Voinovich School. She has an associate's degree in wildlife management and natural resources management from Hawking College and a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife and Fish Conservation and Management from the University of Rio Grande. She collaborates with landowners, citizens, universities, nonprofits, businesses, local, county, state, and federal agencies. Takes a lot of people to get this work done, and has worked with Ohio University's Voinovich School since 2007. So thank you, Amy, for presenting with us today.
All right, thanks a bunch, Jen. Can everybody see my screen okay? Does it look all right, Jen? Looks good? All right,
Yes.
I'm gonna try really, really hard to get through this in 15 minutes, but you might just have to cut me off. So, again, thank you for having me, and apologies to those of you who have heard this presentation a few times before, but we're gonna jump right in. And if you're not familiar with the Raccoon Creek watershed, Raccoon Creek's nearly a 700 square mile watershed draining to the Ohio River. Main stem's about 112 miles long, starts around the Hawking Hills, drains all the way down to the Ohio River around Gallipolis. The watershed drains portions of 6 southeast Ohio counties. Headwaters start up in the Hawking and Vinton County area, drain down through Athens, Meigs, Jackson, and dumps into the Ohio River just below Gallipolis and Gallia County. The Raccoon Creek Partnership is the present nonprofit watershed group that's working in the watershed. Started out in the 1980s as the Raccoon Creek Improvement Committee down in Gallia County. These were concerned citizens. This was grassroots efforts, people who saw issues in Raccoon Creek and wanted to make it better. They got support from community members in all 6 of the counties in the watershed. At that time, Raccoon Creek was considered too far gone, unrecoverable. Agencies didn't really want anything to do with it, said it was a waste of money, not worth the resources. Finally, in the 1990s, these citizens kept pushing, and got some agency attention, and projects began in the watershed in the late 1990s. The Raccoon Creek Partnership nonprofit group was formed in 2007. We're currently governed by a 7-member board of directors. We host 2 AmeriCorps members per year and partner with agencies, landowners, and community members for projects and watershed outreach. So, what's the issue in Raccoon Creek, and how are we fixing it? Like so many other streams in the coal-bearing region of Ohio, historic pre-law coal mining is our #1 issue. Other impairments include low-head dams, invasive species, loss of riparian and streamside buffer, and failing and non-existent home sewage treatment. If you're in this region of Ohio, you know that these are definitely not issues just in Raccoon Creek. These are pretty widespread issues. So the pre-law coal mining impacts about 50,000 acres of mapped pre-law mines in the Raccoon Creek watershed, impairing about 190 stream miles. The primary impact from these pre-law mines is acid mine drainage. AMD increases acidity and metal concentrations and is formed when the iron pyrite in our coal combines with water and oxygen, creating, among other things, sulfuric acid. Other pre-law mining impacts include sedimentation, erosion, habitat degradation, lack of species diversity, and an increase of invasive species. Go back to your probably middle school pH lesson here. pH scale goes from 0 to 14. The good range, our happy fish are swimming there in that 6 to 8-ish range. The acid mine drainage that we're dealing with from these pre-law mines is in that 2 to 4. So this is like lemon juice, Coca-Cola vinegar, orange juice. So that's kind of what we're dealing with the acid mine drainage. Since 1998, about $16 million in AML funds, EPA 319 grants, and OSM Watershed Cooperative Agreement Program grants have been put into Raccoon Creek, funding 22 reclamation, treatment, and major maintenance projects. Reclamation and treatment projects can only be completed on abandoned mine lands. There are still current day active regulated coal mines in Raccoon Creek. All the work I'm talking about is on these pre-law abandoned mine lands. Raccoon Creek Main Stem and Little Raccoon Creek have always been the goals for recovery. Our primary funding source are the AML funds administered by ODNR Division of Mineral Resources Management. These are federal grant funds allocated to ODNR Abandoned Mine Lands Program as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that spans from 22 to 36. ODNR is awarded $46.4 million grant to fund abandoned mine land reclamation and acid mine drainage treatment throughout the state's coal mining region. This is where the majority of our AML and AMD funding comes from. About $13.5 million in Raccoon Creek projects has come from this funding source alone. These funds also support staffing, monitoring, and maintenance in the watershed. Other funding sources in Raccoon Creek include 319 non-point source grants that are administered by the Ohio EPA. These funds typically supplement AML and AMD projects and fund other watershed restoration projects such as Lowhead Dam removals, riparian restorations, etc. About $2 million in Raccoon Creek has come from the 319 non-point source grants. Watershed Cooperative Agreement Program grants administered by OSM, another supplemental funding source, and about $1.5 million spent in Raccoon Creek alone. Very quickly going through the three main AMD remediation methods: active treatment, passive treatment, and reclamation or source control. So these first two are treatment methods for when we have acid mine drainage. It is there, it is impacting our watersheds, and we need to do something about it. So active treatment, such as a calcium oxide doser, is actively adding an alkaline material to our acidic sources. This alkaline material neutralizes the pH and helps to restore those acid mine drainage impaired waters. These dosers have low initial costs, very high maintenance costs. Passive treatments, like steel slag leach beds, open limestone channels, successive alkaline producing systems, wetlands, these are more of a passive system. Water is flowing through these systems, dropping out metals, reducing acidity. These have moderate initial costs, moderate maintenance costs. Reclamation and source control, this is not a treatment method. If we can reclaim a site to keep it from creating acid mine drainage, this is ideal. So a lot of our large surface mine sites, we can reclaim those sites, high initial cost, but no maintenance cost because we are reducing or eliminating the formation of acid mine drainage. This is our calcium oxide doser in Carbondale. This doser, the silo is filled with calcium oxide. This specific doser is water powered. The underground mine actually turns a water wheel which dispenses that calcium oxide, which treats a large underground mine system. Passive treatment, steel slag leach beds use an alkaline byproduct of the steel industry to increase the alkalinity of water. These do require maintenance, but not nearly as much maintenance as a doser would require. A wetland, most everybody in the watershed world knows the benefits of wetlands. These benefits are similar in acid mine drainage and abandoned mine land watersheds. Wetlands can precipitate out metals below treatment projects. Some of the plants can take up some of the metals. Minimal or no maintenance once these wetlands are established. Reclamation or source control. These top two pictures here show an abandoned mine site, a surface mine site in Hawken County. These sites were mined, the coal was taken, and they were left as is. So there's a lot of acid-forming materials, unwanted coal. That material generates a lot of acid mine drainage every time it rains. So the lower picture is post-construction. This site was reclaimed. That coal spoil was capped with clay where water can flow off of the site and into our streams as fresh water instead of generating acid mine drainage. Lowhead dams are another impairment in the Raccoon Creek watershed. These are smaller, non-regulated dams originally installed to operate grist mills, water treatment, municipal water, road crossings, etc. Lowhead dams inhibit fish passage, they're a human safety risk, and disrupt stream channel morphology. There's a big push to eliminate lowhead dams across the country right now. There are 4 dams still existing in the watershed. Northup, Coromel, Vinton, and Wellston. We'll talk a little bit more about this Vinton Dam here in a minute. We have removed one of the dams from the Raccoon Creek watershed. This was a small low-head dam in Sandy Run, which is in Zaleski State Forest near Lake Hope. It was a small dam, only about 40 feet long and 3 foot high, but it did serve as a barrier to fish passage and created unnatural pools devoid of habitat features. Before this dam was removed, there were 12 species of fish downstream of the dam and only 4 upstream. The fish literally could not get there. That species count has evened out now that the dam was removed. This dam was removed through 319 grant funds. I need to move a lot faster. This dam in Vinton County is actually the borderline of our most improved section. So we really want to get this one out of here. This is a dam located 40 miles upstream of the mouth of Raccoon. Significant barrier to fish passage, significant human safety risk. No plans for removal, but this dam actually 2 weeks ago partially blew out, so nature's kind of working with us on this one. Asian carp in Raccoon Creek, first documented in 2016. Surveys are ongoing with multi-agencies working to see how these fish are moving, remove some from the system, and try to keep them from working their way farther upstream. Maintaining water quality. So we have all of these projects into the Raccoon Creek watershed. Once a project's installed, that doesn't mean it's just done and the watershed will be fixed forever. These projects need continuous monitoring and maintenance. Chemical and biological monitoring is ongoing to document long-term monitoring trends, project-specific trends. This is how we know if we need more projects, if our projects need maintenance. Chemical samplings conducted ongoing throughout the year. Fish and macroinvertebrates typically sampled every 4 to 5 years. We're actually doing biology in Raccoon Creek this coming summer. Active and passive treatment projects require continued maintenance to remain effective. Active treatments like the doser, someone has to be out there pretty much every week to maintain these systems. We have to order material, make sure they're continually functioning. Passive treatment, a little less maintenance, but still have to get out there to make sure everything's functioning properly. A few pictures of monitoring and maintenance in here. Probably looks familiar to a lot of you that are in this world. So recovery and successes. Probably wouldn't be asked to come chat with you guys today if these projects weren't successful. So after all of these years of work and all the money spent, 22 projects and all this monitoring and all these partners, is it working? Luckily, yes. We hear people tell us all the time that they're just so shocked to see fish in Raccoon Creek now. They were never there when they were kids. In 22, Ohio EPA officially approved the upgraded aquatic life uses for Raccoon Creek. Over 100 stream miles of Raccoon Creek and Little Raccoon Creek are now meeting or exceeding criteria for warm water habitat. The most downstream 32 miles from that dam in Vinton that just partially blew out, which is the blue line on your map here, down to the backwaters of the Ohio River, are now meeting exceptional warm water habitat. So this is high biodiversity, rare species, biological recovery seen downstream of projects, and over 90 species of fish documented in Raccoon Creek by our partners. In 1981, there were only 21 species of fish in all of Raccoon Creek. 1984, there was 1 species of fish documented in Little Raccoon Creek. Move that to now, there are about 78 species in the main stem of Raccoon Creek and 34 species in Little Raccoon. We're seeing eastern sand darters, paddlefish, both relatively uncommon species requiring good aquatic systems. Bonus, when your water's not orange and dead, people want to come there to recreate. In 2018, I approached DNAP and talked to them about the lack of scenic rivers in Southeast Ohio. It's a very sad situation down there in Southeast. We have scenic rivers throughout the rest of the state and none in Southeast Ohio. We worked with the DNAP personnel to basically get Raccoon Creek designated. It's a much longer story than that, but the successful restoration of Raccoon Creek made it an ideal candidate for the first designated stream in Southeast Ohio. We met with county engineers, county commissioners, lots and lots of different people in the watershed to let them know what the designation would mean, how big of an accomplishment it would be for a stream that was once considered dead as a bag of hammers to now be meeting warm water and exceptional warm water aquatic life uses. In fall of 2024, Director Mertz made the final choice to designate, and the stream was officially designated the first state scenic river in Southeast Ohio on November 12th, 2024. Exciting news. We're super excited to see Raccoon Creek down there on the list of scenic rivers. Actually, since this map was updated, Scioto Brush Creek, which is a bit west of Raccoon Creek, was also designated. So getting some streams on the map down there in Raccoon Creek. Trying to fly through this pretty quick. And to end it all out, huge thanks to all of our partners who support, fund, and manage projects in the Raccoon Creek watershed. We, when I say we, this is Ohio University that funds Jen and I and several others on this call, as well as the agencies who fund and manage these projects and monitoring and everything that goes into restoring a watershed. Huge list of partners here, and this is definitely not inclusive of everybody who has worked in the Raccoon Creek watershed. And I want to thank everyone that is here on this call and in this line of work for helping to make our streams in Southeast Ohio and all of Ohio a little bit better. And with that, I'm sure I don't have time for questions, but my email address is there. If we don't have time during this chat, please reach out to me in the future.
Thank you, Amy. I've seen this presentation many times, but that's the fastest you've ever done it. And you still have plenty of time for questions. So if there are any questions, you can unmute and ask directly or put it in the chat for Amy on the restoration activities and work that she's coordinated for so many years here in Raccoon Creek.
There's a lot of things I would have liked to say, but that 12:20 listed on there as my deadline had me a little nervous. So I'll go ahead and what's that?
I stole a couple of your minutes. So
You did. I'll
yeah.
go ahead and stop sharing so the next person can get set up.
Okay. Okay, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat here and we will have a chance to circle back around to questions afterwards. And while Stephanie's getting her slides set up here, I will do her introduction. So Stephanie Dyer is with the Eastgate's Regional Council of Governments. She's going to present today on the Mahoning River. And let's see here. Stephanie's bio. She's a 2001 Youngstown State University Environmental Studies program graduate with Bachelor of Science. Stephanie started with Eastgate Regional Council of Governments. She's in her 23rd year now. She's the agency's environmental program manager and District 6 liaison for the Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Program. Through her work, she manages the area-wide water quality management plan, the 208 plan for Mahoning and Trumbull counties, and coordinates on and development of watershed plans. Since her start, she has led Eastgate's growth from 208 plan management into the world of watershed planning. Stephanie works closely with the Ohio EPA's Division of Surface Waters Northeast District staff to revitalize the Mahoning River, collaborates and provides technical assistance to the region's surface drinking water providers and stormwater management agencies. Stephanie brings the Mahoning River and its watersheds back to life by championing for removal of the river's low-head dams, providing education to local and state officials, civic groups, residents, and students, and participates in outreach activities promoting watershed functions, quality improvement techniques, and personal responsibility. So with that, we welcome Stephanie Dyer to give us her presentation, and I can see your slides just fine.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Jen, and welcome everybody to my presentation. Hopefully by the end of these slides, you'll kind of see a connection for the projects and how we've kind of interweaved a bunch of funding situations to help remove our low-head dams in the Mahoning River. So first, just a little background on the Mahoning River. We are located up in the pretty much lower northeast corner of Ohio. We're one of the headwaters to the Ohio watershed, and I like to describe us as kind of the buckle in the Rust Belt. So we connect Pittsburgh to Cleveland, and even though the Mahoning River didn't catch fire like the Cuyahoga River did, our river was still significantly impacted by the steel mill industries that had placed their homes along the lower portion of the Mahoning River. It is impaired for its warm water habitat life use designation. Mainly the impairments are because of the low flow modifications that are due to the dams or the impoundments that are in the Mahoning River. Behind each dam is a plethora of sediment that is contaminated with PCBs, PAHs, and heavy metals. So when we talk about our dam removal projects, we're not only talking about removing just the Lowhead Dam, but first we have to go in and dredge a reach of the Mahoning River, remove the sediment and treat that and dispose of it properly. Then we go back in and remove the dams. Historical discharges, like I mentioned, we were one of 3 steel mill cities. We had 15 primary mills, 35 related industries along the river. And you could see the daily discharges that we had back in the heyday when the mills were up and running. Temperatures were so great that most of the time in the winter, the river never froze over. So that's one of the items to point out. But you can see the daily discharges that we had going into the Mahoning River. So water quality has improved since 1994 when we had an initial study of 29 sites on the river. 2 of the 29 met the standards, but 83% did not meet the standards. So back in 2013, when the Ohio EPA revisited our watershed, they evaluated 25 sites. And you can see that we had more sites meet the standards than we did not meet their standards. So it kind of swapped. Even though at that time, we still had low-head dams within the river, we were still making some accomplishments with improving water quality. Restoration planning efforts began in the late 1990s with under the Army Corps of Engineers. They started an ecological restoration path in 1999. And it wasn't until 2012, about 14 years later, that we realized that the ecological restoration plan under the Corps was dead in the water. So what had happened was the Army Corps had created a draft feasibility study on removing the dams, but restoring the Mahoning River. And at that time, restoring the river meant dredging the entire reach from Levittsburg, which is the upper portion of the lower Mahoning River watershed, which is our focus, all the way down to the Ohio PA line right outside of Lowville. So that study, after 14 years of reviewing it and looking at the dams, the sediment, what was in the sediment, the Army Corps came back to our region and told us that this project was no longer able to move forward because of the liability with the sediment, the legacy pollutants in there, and the CERCLA issue. So about a year later, the Ohio EPA approached us and mentioned what the communities up in the Cuyahoga River were doing. And they were using Ohio EPA's WRRSP funding to remove low-head dams within the Cuyahoga River. So utilizing that as our model, Eastgate and the local communities along the Mahoning River decided to begin our journey with removing low-head dams, utilizing their Water Resource Restoration Sponsorship Program funds. That's the WRRSP. So in 2012, the first dam removal project was initiated, and we started with the lowest hanging fruit, which was Lowville. So Lowville was the first dam. It's the most downstream dam in the Mahoning River. We started, like I said, lowest hanging fruit. It was the one that was pretty much easiest to get out in a matter of time and had the least amount of polluted sediment within the dam pool. So in 2020, the first dam was removed, and typically those WRRSP projects last about 2 years. Well, because of issues outside of the control of our community, it took us quite a long time to get the first dam removed. And since 2020, we have had successful WRRSP applications presented to the Ohio EPA and funded subsequently after 2020. So Eastgate has served as kind of like that wheel to get the communities introduced to the WRRSP program. And we've helped them along with their applications and have been a part of their team as far as when the dam removal project starts. So present day, fast forward, we started with 11 dams back in the Army Corps days. 2 of those dams were removed by ODOT under a mitigation program that they had. They were just pretty much remnants and rubble that just needed to be massaged out within the river channel itself. But the remaining 9 dams were taken out and are still under works right now to be taken out. So 4 dams still remain. Actually, 5 dams still remain. Out of the 9 dams, we had 3 removed. Lowville, the city of Struthers, and the city of Warren had their dams removed. 1 dam is currently almost done. We hope that the one in Levittsburg, or the Canoe City Dam, should be removed by the end of February, maybe March. But the 5 dams, the 4 dams that remain are the ones located in Youngstown, the one that is located in Warren Township. It's owned by the Western Reserve Port Authority in Cleveland Cliffs, and the Girard Dam, which is pretty much our largest dam and most expensive dam that we're currently going to seek funding for. So funding secured to date, you can see the pie chart is made up of many different pieces. We've secured over $25 million for our area to remove these dams. A majority of it comes from the Ohio EPA's WRRSP funds, but we've been fortunate to have LTV bankruptcy funding that was slated for our region of the Mahoning River that we split up between a couple of municipalities to utilize as gap funding for their dam removal projects. The Monsanto PCB settlement funds, that was brought to our attention a couple years ago, and Eastgate presented to the PCB board to secure that funding to help remove one of the dams in the Mahoning River. But you can see we also have H2 Ohio, Clean Ohio, and a state line item from ODNR's fiscal year 20 budget. So if you're not familiar with the WRRSP program, it's a great marriage between the water pollution control, so the wastewater community, and those in the environmental realm that want to restore wetlands, streams, or remove low head dams. So the goal of the program is to reduce the loss of ecological function. The source of the funding comes from the state revolving loan funds, but the benefit to a WPCLF, the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, is anybody in the state of Ohio who is applying to the Ohio EPA for a water pollution control project, which is mainly, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, things related to that type of infrastructure. If they sponsor a ecological restoration project, such as removing low head dams, they can receive a discount to their loan interest of up to 0.1%. So it's a win-win for not only the community applying for that loan, but it's also a win for somebody in the state of Ohio who is working to restore sections of a stream. It's just a win-win for both communities. Our LTV bankruptcy settlement funds, this was from a settlement back in 2003. The funds were over $4 million. The Ohio EPA held the funding, but Eastgate and the Ohio EPA have worked with our local communities to get agreements that they are able to tap into the LTV funds to withdraw funding from that to pay for sediment-related activities. So the Ohio EPA stipulation was any work relating to dam removal projects, if you're utilizing LTV bankruptcy dollars, it has to be related to the sediment. So that includes dredging, disposal, treatment, things of that sort. Our Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Fund program, that is through the Ohio Public Works. It is the green side of the program. They also have a gray side, which is the infrastructure program. Eastgate administers it for Mahoning and Trumbull counties, which is District 6. And we had one community utilize Clean Ohio, and that was to help complete the stream restoration component to their dam removal project. This was the city of Struthers that applied to Clean Ohio. And in order to get more bang for their buck when it came to restoring the Mahoning River in their stream section, they applied for the over $800,000 in Clean Ohio to help get the best of the best type of restoration for the stream. The ODNR state biennium budget line item was pretty much a surprise to Eastgate. They had slated over $2 million in their fiscal year 20 budget line for the Mahoning River. So 1.5 million went to river restoration and $500,000 went to a river corridor study. Part of that corridor study also provided HEC-RAS modeling for the river between Girard and Levittsburg. So that information was gained through these funds, and it was given to the community so that when they apply for the WRRSP dollars, they were given more information to make it a better application to the Ohio EPA. We also used some of those funds for 2 private industries. At the time, McDonald Steel was still operating, and Cleveland Cliffs, we did a hydraulic modeling study for their pump station. So Cleveland Cliffs is the only steel mill that is still working with the Mahoning River and withdrawing water and using it for their coke plant. So we helped them get a kind of like a contingency plan in place for if that dam should, go on its own through Mother Nature. Here's some items to look at. So Eastgate helped them with that. H2 Ohio Rivers, we had 2.26 million awarded in our region. Some of it was used for a cost share for an Army Corps of Engineers Girard Dam study. This is under their Section 206 Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Program, where 35% of the total project cost has to come from a non-federal entity. So Eastgate, being the non-federal entity, we were able to secure the over $200,000 for that match for them to go ahead and develop a feasibility study for the Girard Dam. $369,000 was used for additional work for the city of Warren. They're using those dollars to do additional stream bank stabilization immediately downstream of where their Summit Street Dam site was. And the remaining 1.63 million is being utilized by the Trumbull County Metro Parks to provide gap funding from their WRRSP dollars to complete the stream restoration component of that project. So as you go through dam removal projects, there are certain milestones that you meet as far as funding goes. And during those milestones, you start to identify where funding shortages could be made or could be seen. And at that point, we were fortunate, the Metro Parks was fortunate enough to be able to get H2 Ohio dollars to complete the dam removal project, the stream restoration component. The Monsanto settlement was a funding pot that was introduced to us by Ohio EPA. Knowing that we were looking for additional funding to remove a dam in the Mahoning River. It was the Main Street Dam. This dam is owned by the Western Reserve Port Authority as well as Cleveland Cliffs. So we had to go down and present in front of the PCB board and explain to them why this portion of the river is appropriate for their funding. Their funding is tied to PCB related pollutants, PAHs. So of course, in our area, we knew that our river legacy pollutants was PCB related. We were able to acquire $5 million for this project. So much of it will be used for a Cleveland Cliffs pump house infrastructure modification, and the remaining portion of it will be used towards the dam removal project itself. Finally, a quick summary of the dam removal projects and the funding that was associated with it. Again, as I mentioned, the WRSP program is a great marriage between local communities and the state in general. So you can see the Village of Lowville, we had a $2.3 million project. The PCLF sponsor was the City of Canton. So they received a discount in their loan interest by sponsoring the Village of Lowville. And one thing to mention about the WRRSP is the cost of the projects need to amount to the interest of a PCLF project. So the City of Canton's interest on their project was enough to fund the $2.38 million project. City of Struthers, the sponsor there was the City of Akron, but the funding programs that we had were the WRRSP, LTV, and Clean Ohio. City of Youngstown is $6.5 million. The 3 dams are still remaining, and the city is currently working on moving forward with their project. Their sponsor is the City of Elyria. The City of Warren, for their Summit Street Dam project, they received their sponsorship from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, which is kind of interesting because that crosses the Mississippi Divide. As you know, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District drains into Lake Erie, but we were fortunate enough to get a sponsorship from them to sponsor this project, which drains into the Ohio River Basin. Trumbull County Metro Parks, their sponsor was the City of Akron. So Akron's project, the interest in that project was enough to fund the $3.2 million project. And Eastgate and the Western Port Authority working together for the Main Street Dam, which is, again, the $5 million project that will include the dam removal, as well as pump modifications to Cleveland Cliffs Pump Station. And with that, that is the collaboration that we have had. So in the end, we've had all the communities along the Mahoning River rally together and support one another with the dam removal projects, whether it is happening right within their community or downstream. We've had a great collaboration through the Mayor's Association and Eastgate getting the players at the table to make this dream become a reality. And with
Thank you,
that, I'll
Stephanie.
stop.
Thank you. If there's any questions, let's put them in the chat and we will get to them in our sort of last 5 minutes here after Chloe's presentation. But thank you, Stephanie. It was a nice collection of very diverse funding sources in large sums. So it was very helpful to see those examples. While Chloe's pulling up her slides here, she's going to Chloe Brantley's with the Kentucky Rural Water Association. She's going to speak about the source water and contaminants of emerging concern. Chloe's professional experience includes water policy and regulation, water resources management, water and wastewater infrastructure, and project interface between federal, state, and regional and local agencies. Chloe has held various roles with URS Corporation in the Western United States, Kentucky Division of Water, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Louisville District. She is currently serving as a source water specialist for the Kentucky Rural Water Association, and her background is in ecology and sustainability environmental studies. Thank you, Chloe, and I can see your slides. Thanks.
Great. Okay, thanks. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about drinking water and contaminants of emerging concern in Kentucky, but also just a little about Ohio River. So I work for Kentucky Rural Water Association. We provide technical assistance, professional development, and training in the state, and every state has one of these. We're part of a national association that provides these services throughout the United States. I'm going to focus on drinking water and a little bit about wastewater, but mostly drinking water. But you can kind of just see how many community water systems are in the United States. And I just want to point out Kentucky in this map because you can see we have a lot of service. We pride ourselves on having a lot of coverage and providing a lot of public service, water service. There are parts of our state that still have a lot of private use, and we're working on that. You can see by this slide that we have a lot of public water systems in the state, and they're old, but we've worked on consolidating these throughout the last 50 years, and we have been recognized as a leader in regionalization in the United States, along with better service. We have reduced the number of our public water systems by 80% over the last 50 years, but this reliance has gone from groundwater dominated systems in our state to surface water systems dominated in our state. And we face a lot of challenges. There's a lot of regulations. I'm going to talk about that. Emerging contaminants and new regulations. We have a lot of inadequate treatment methods and technologies for our water and wastewater systems. And so you'll see we have a lot of infrastructure that's deteriorating, reliability and service interruptions, financial constraints that has economic impacts and impacts on water quality and compliance. And a lot of that deters economic growth in our state. You'll see this common throughout water utilities in the United States, but these are kind of the top needs that we see in our state and we see in our neighboring states. So we rely mostly on EPA SRF money to provide our funding. This is just a snapshot of how much we need and just in Kentucky for drinking water. That's with the B billion. And in the Ohio River Basin, it's 109. And that's for drinking water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure. But those are all very, very underestimated amounts of money involved in infrastructure. It's an expensive to be in the utility business. And I just want to point out that federal capital investment in 1970s was 63%, and now it's below 9%. That's an old estimate. But we rely on this state revolving process for most of our work. And this equitable water infrastructure investments are getting eroded as we speak. We rely, like I said, mostly in Kentucky on surface water systems. We're known for the amount of water that we have in our state, and we try to take care of it, but it takes a lot of work. I'll talk about surface water. Like I said, groundwater. These are our source water protection areas in the state that are highlighted in blue and red and yellow, and other use in the state. But you can see it's more than 60% of our watersheds provide drinking water to our citizens. But I might point you out to the Ohio River where it's really busy. You see a lot of activity going on there. That's because we rely on the Ohio River for our drinking water, like most of our neighboring states, if not more so. We've seen threats though, right? We've seen it be on the threatened list, right? 5 million people drink from this river, yet it's also the source of a lot of pollution. And so we are at risk because we are not taking care of our river. Like I said, everybody has said we have made great strides, but we still have a lot of work to do. The Ohio River, again, lots of discharges. There's a lot going on in the basin. There's, over 16 watersheds in lots of different states that we cross, 14. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of cooperation that we need to do now and in the future. We also see, right, why we're here today. Why do we need to invest in this? We need to clean it up. We need to provide higher public health. We need to clean up algae blooms. We need to look at emerging contaminants, and just looking at how do we do this together. So in the utility profession, we really look at water as one water, and we need to work towards this much more in the future. And that's why young professionals like me, everybody on this call, really wants to see this more of something that we do together instead of in our silos. You can see this graph, and this is what a lot of utilities are trying to work towards. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of money. Emerging contaminants, right? We now see why we have one water discharges. We have a lot of emerging contaminants that we're getting by air, soil, water, and through our lungs and through our dermis. So we're not getting exposures just through drinking water, but I'll just talk to you about drinking water because that's what we're talking about today. So emerging contaminants come from lots of different sources, inorganic, organic, biological, other sources that we intake through drinking water, and like I said, a lot of different ways. But we don't always detect these, and we have to figure out how do we do that because they're new. They also are not regulated by the Safe Drinking Water Act. The Safe Drinking Water Act has regulated a lot of different chemicals through time, as you can see at this timeline, and it takes a lot of work to get to these rules being enacted. And you can see also on the list that there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm just going to talk to you about a few of these, but this list is not exhaustive, clearly. PFAS is the one that that you just saw on that list on the last administration was regulating this, and we're doing a lot of monitoring as we speak, and compliance was supposed to begin in 2029. That's now been bumped to 2031, and some of those chemicals have been removed from that MCL list, and we just have 2 left. In Kentucky, we have seen kind of a range of different PFAS in our drinking water. And I'll just say the trend towards the Ohio River is that there's PFAS in those sources. And also, this is a groundwater snapshot of the same thing in Kentucky and really in the Ohio River Basin. As you can see, there's a lot of increasing probability towards public water supplies having PFAS. Another discharge is discharges, accidental, incidental discharges that we see on the news that come through. We have to test for them. We have to look for them. We have to surveil for them and figure out how to treat for them. We use this by looking at discharge permits and what is discharging into our drinking water sources. We use litigation, as this is an example of one that was done along the Ohio River by a lot of bigger utilities that found a plant in West Virginia was producing 90% of 1,4-D in the Ohio River Basin. So they created a lawsuit based on permitting and administrative hearings to look at how do we get them in a consent decree to reduce those discharges to our basin. We also look at stormwater utilities. A lot of them are small, as you can see, and what are they discharging from our cities and towns in the country? They have a lot of work to do. Sewer has to be expanded. Upgrades of treatment plants need to be done. CSOs and SSOs need to be reduced. And that takes a lot of infrastructure, a lot of work, and a lot of funding that sometimes comes to our ratepayers, which is what we try to prevent. But things are not improving in that regard. We also look at how do we reduce nutrients from our wastewater treatment plants. So we either take them offline or work towards doing nutrient reductions at those plants to try to have less phosphorus, less nitrogen, less contributions from our utilities. We also look at climate change. And this is just for Kentucky, this one on the left, but nationwide, we're seeing changes in precipitation and temperature, and that creates a lot of HABs, and those are intensifying that we've seen in the last few years since really the teens that we have seen these increase over time, and it's having costs for our health, our environment, and our animals also. We've seen this along the Ohio River. We have networks to try to watch for this because treating it is really, really difficult at water treatment plants. It creates a whole host of different nightmares, and it's very costly to look at, to treat, and to get finished water to your house safely. So we do this right, or Sanko, we rely on water quality sampling at USGS. They look at super gauges throughout Kentucky, Indiana. These are all over the place, surveilling at what's coming down the river and how do we treat it? How do we reduce those loads? These are just kind of like a little snapshot of what we looked at in Kentucky, different things, different equipment. You'll see these along the roads. It's surveilling. That's what I say. It's surveilling for us to kind of see what's coming down the river. What do we look out for? What do we need? What do we have to look out for? What are we looking out for that's coming down the chute? What land use? How do we reduce our nutrients from our agricultural lands, especially, but also our urban areas? You can see on these maps that we work towards wastewater treatment plants not contributing as much, and we work with different partners to look at how do we reduce farm fertilizer inputs to Kentucky. So we do that through working with NRCS on source water protection funding, where we map those source water protection areas and they get extra funding to do BMPs in those areas. That has been since the 2018 Farm Bill, and you can see that some of those things are being awarded and that money is being spent, which is a great thing. We work again, like I said, with USDA to do this. We work together to leverage funding, to look at state funding, to make some of these projects work in those source water protection areas, because conservation, supporting watersheds, looking at water quality, and looking at green infrastructure is what we want to try to do to improve those drinking water sources. And so that looks like a hodgepodge of different work in our state, right? Like we have all kinds of different work in this regard happening in our state. This is, again, Chloe Brantley. If anybody has questions about what I just sped through, I would love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. We do have a couple minutes here for questions, and I can kick us off with one here for Chloe. And there's a couple questions for Amy in the chat that we'll get to here in a second. But on your USGS gauge stations throughout Kentucky, how are those funded? Do you help secure funding and the placement of where you would like to see those gauge stations installed?
Yes, we have some utilities in some of our watersheds that have had water quality issues that have driven some partnerships that we have with the state and with them to try to find funding to put those stations in or up what they're doing, right? Sometimes they're just taking flow, right, measurements gauge for flooding. And so we try to, up those, but it's very expensive and it requires contracts with governments and stuff like that. So yes, we do, but we would like to see a lot more of that being done also.
Thank you. If you have other questions, you can put them in the chat here. I'm going to circle back to Amy with a couple of questions on Raccoon Creek. One question from Laura Fay was, did you do any work to eliminate failing septic systems?
So that's not something that we, as in OU, have done in Raccoon Creek. Jen, you probably would know more about this than I do because I am very much in abandoned mine land world. But that's not. So the acid mine drainage issues and abandoned mine land issues in Raccoon Creek were so dominating of our water quality issues that's been the focus for decades. But now that a lot of those issues have been remediated, we can start moving on to other projects, including the sewage treatment. But that's not actually something that I have very much knowledge about personally.
Yeah, I could add to that. We did some E. coli studies in targeted watersheds, and it is an issue that there is excess nutrients and bacteria that are coming from our failing septic systems. And as recreation becomes more prominent, it will be something that we need to focus on more as the water is not orange anymore. It's what's next on the list. But so far, that work hasn't happened in outside of what the health departments do with the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, where they're helping folks to upgrade or put their septic systems in place, but that's all handled through our health departments. And Amy, there's another question here on the Raccoon Creek restoration. Did you remove one or more low head dams that restricted fish migration? Going from 20 plus to 90 plus species shows many migrants from the Ohio River are now residents.
Yeah, so the low head dam that we removed was all the way up in the headwaters. So most of the fish, quote, returning to Raccoon Creek has not been related to the Lowhead dams, but more so to the improving water quality. So the main barrier in Raccoon Creek was that the water quality was awful. The Raccoon Creek was considered dead as a bag of hammers to many of you who know Mitch Farley. That's what he referred to much of Raccoon Creek as. So if the water is not inhabitable, fish can't be there. So it's amazing how fast fish move back from pockets of good water and disperse into the rest of the watershed as the chemical parameters have improved. So the farthest downstream Lowhead Dam in Raccoon Creek at Northup is deteriorating. It is no longer really serving as much of a fish barrier. So even at medium to high flows, that closest dam to the Ohio River is not serving as a fish passage barrier. The next one up, the Cora Mill Dam, is also the man-made portion of that dam is gone. It has been washed away, and what's left there is a natural rock shelf. So at low flow, yes, definitely still impeding fish passage upstream, but at higher flow, fish are able to pass that one. The dam at Vinton, the one that just recently, like 2 weeks ago, has partially blown out. That one is a fairly significant barrier to fish passage. So Raccoon Creek from the Ohio River backwaters all the way up to River Mile 40, which is where that Lowhead Dam in Vinton is meeting exceptional warm water habitat now. So fish have been able to move fairly freely from the Ohio River up into that area. Fish from upstream are able to be in that area, but there are, I can't remember the exact number, 16, 17 species that were found downstream of that dam that should be in the next 30 or so miles upstream that aren't there because of that dam. If that dam was partially removed or removed, we predict that another 30 to 35 miles of Raccoon Creek upstream of the Vinton Dam would also be able to meet exceptional warm water habitat. So the dam's definitely impeding fish passage, but the water quality improvements are what really allowed fish to spread into more areas of Raccoon Creek as it was improved.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I would like to invite you all to join us for our next webinar, February 25th, also at noon, looking at turning science into stories, so connecting people to water quality and the environment. And we have 3 speakers that will be joining us for that webinar, and the registration link is there on your screen. As always, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to me or email me at bowmanj2@ohio.edu. I'll put it in the chat here if anyone needs that. Thanks, everyone.